What if I told you that one of the most powerful queens in history, a woman who bankrolled Columbus, crushed kingdoms, and built the Spanish Empire brick by bloody brick, might have also sparked a hygiene crisis in her own palace, all because she refused to change her damn underwear? Yeah, you heard that right. Meet Isabella of Castile. Saint to some, nightmare roommate to others. Because according to legend, she swore an oath so bizarre, so rank, it made her undergarments a symbol of religious devotion and borderline biological warfare. But hold up, was this some medieval smear campaign? Or did Spain's golden queen really go years without swapping out her royal drawers? And today, we're tearing into one of the weirdest tales ever whispered about Queen Isabella. A story that's probably BS, but reveals everything about politics, propaganda, and just how far rulers went to prove they were holy. Let's get one thing straight, right off the bat. This whole Isabella never changed her underwear thing, probably fake, most likely cooked up long after she died, part hater gossip, part Catholic PR. But the fact that people believed it and still repeat it is what makes it gold. Because that myth exposes how obsessed people were with making power look pious, even when it smelled like old laundry. So, rewind to 1451. Isabella's born into chaos. Castile's a hot mess. Spain isn't even a thing yet. It's just a tangle of kingdoms, where Christians, Muslims, and Jews are locked in an awkward, centuries-long roommate situation. Her dad, King John II, a weak player. Her half-brother Henry IV, so ineffective, nobles straight up called him Henry the Impotent, and not just politically. From the jump, Isabella learned that nobody hands you a crown, you snatch it. When she was 6, war broke out over who'd rule. Nobles questioned if she was even legitimate. They tried marrying her off to anyone who'd keep her quiet and out of the game. But Isabella, she didn't just sit and sew in a tower. She plotted. At 18, she shocked everyone by secretly marrying Ferdinand of Aragon. It wasn't for love, it was war strategy. This was her first checkmate. By joining forces with Ferdinand, Isabella wasn't just securing a husband, she was building the biggest Christian power bloc the peninsula had ever seen. Together, they weren't just planning to win battles. They were planning to end the Reconquista, erase centuries of Muslim rule, and forge a nation where everyone bowed to one crown, one church, one destiny. And somewhere in the middle of all that empire building, someone started talking about her underwear. This wasn't just about land, it was a holy mission with a body count. Isabella and Ferdinand didn't just want power, they wanted a total religious purge. Their dream? Wipe out Muslim rule in Iberia for good. No diplomacy, no coexistence, just absolute Catholic control. And to do it, they had to crush the last glittering outpost of Islamic brilliance in Europe, Granada. But to understand why Isabella supposedly swore a vow that would make your skin crawl, you've got to understand the battlefield she was walking into. Because medieval Spain wasn't this polished Catholic paradise you see in schoolbooks or period dramas. It was chaos held together with threats, fear, and religious tensions simmering just below the surface. For 800 years, 8 centuries, Spain had been a war zone. Christians and Muslims were locked in an on-again, off-again blood feud they called the Reconquista. But by the late 1400s, it wasn't just about winning castles. It was about purifying a nation. And to Isabella, Granada wasn't some jewel of Muslim architecture. It was a challenge to her God, a stench in the nostrils of Christian supremacy, a stain she swore to scrub out, no matter the cost. And here's where the underwear comes in. Granada was ruled by the Nasrid dynasty, tough-as-nails diplomats who had survived centuries by playing their enemies like fiddles. They bribed, schemed, and swung swords when it suited them. But by 1482, Their luck was running out. And Isabella? She wasn't planning to wait. She wanted this done, and she wanted it biblically. Legend says she made a promise. She wouldn't change her clothes or her underwear until Granada fell. Now, hold on, because this is where things go from gross to legendary. We're not talking about a few days of dirt, or even weeks of war grind. We're talking 10 full years. Same linen, same sweat, same everything, while leading a military campaign under the burning southern sun. Let that sink in. Imagine going 10 years in the same outfit while fighting a war. Sounds insane, right? But here's the thing. Back then, this wasn't completely out of the question. Hygiene in medieval Europe? Let's just say it wouldn't pass a modern health inspection. People understood that filth could cause illness, but they blamed it on bad air and unbalanced body fluids, not germs. Too many baths? Doctors warned it could open your pores and let in disease. Washing too often was considered risky. As for clothes, linen was luxury. Even royals had just a few changes. And on a military campaign? Forget it. Laundry wasn't exactly a top priority while laying siege to cities. Still, even by medieval standards, Isabella's so-called vow freaked people out. Court officials started whispering. Advisors grew nervous. The smell alone could have launched a plague, or so they feared. Her chambermaids? Probably ready to mutiny. But Isabella didn't flinch, because to her, this wasn't a gross gamble, it was a divine flex. A holy woman in holy war, sacrificing comfort, pride, and yes, personal hygiene for the soul of a nation. And that brings us to the siege of Granada itself, one of the bloodiest, longest, most symbolically loaded conflicts in Spanish history. The walls of Granada weren't just old, they were legendary. They'd outlived kings, crushed rebellions, and stood tall through centuries of chaos. Behind them, some of the sharpest military minds the Islamic world had ever seen. So yeah, storming this fortress wasn't going to be just about brute force. Isabella and Ferdinand knew it. If they wanted to break Granada, they needed more than swords. They needed a miracle, or at least the appearance of one. Well, if everything is all the way in front. And here's where the insane legend kicks off. According to some chroniclers, who may or may not have been high on incense, Isabella stood before God, her generals, and her horrified attendants, and made a vow that would go down in infamy. She promised, swore on holy relics no less, that she wouldn't change her underwear until Granada fell. Yeah, you heard that right. Not a week, not a month, not even a season, until it fell. Now, the details vary, but the version that gets whispered in the darker corners of Spanish history goes like this. She kneeled down, clutched some sacred bones, and declared something like, "As Christ suffered on the cross, I too shall suffer this minor burden until every last Moor surrenders." People were stunned. Soldiers winced. Priests tried not to gag. The siege, it dragged on for almost 10 years, and supposedly, through the dust and blood and campfire smoke, Isabella stuck to her vow. A queen with a divine mission and underwear that was turning into legend for all the wrong reasons. Of course, historians say it's all a myth, probably propaganda cooked up decades later to make her look extra pious. But let's be honest, the idea stuck for a reason. Because the real Isabella? She was even more intense than the story. While rumors about her stench were flying, Isabella was out there pulling off one of the most ruthless, brilliant campaigns in medieval Europe. She wasn't just sitting on a throne, sipping wine and shouting orders. Nah. She rolled out a full-blown military operation like a boss. She crushed smaller Moorish towns one by one, tightening the noose around Granada like she was playing chess. and everyone else was still learning checkmate. She built permanent war camps, organized supply chains that ran the length of Spain, deployed siege engines no one had seen before. Historians would later say she laid the groundwork for the brutal tactics used in the Americas. This wasn't just a queen, this was a war general in a dress, covered in grit and possibly, according to some, bodily fumes. By 1485, the city of Ronda collapsed after a long, ugly siege. In 1487, Malaga surrendered, but not before starving so badly that its people were chewing on bark and boiled leather. Then came Baza in 1889. That one cracked after a mix of threats, blockades, and gold sealed the deal. And with every city that fell, Isabella's image as a holy avenger got bigger. So did the gossip about the unwashed queen and her toxic aura. By then, her inner circle was apparently panicking. Royal doctors started dropping warnings about disease and miasma. Servants possessively drew straws to see who had to go into her tent. There are even claims that Isabella's personal quarters had to be placed downwind from the rest of the army camp, just to keep people from passing out. But while everyone was fixated on her questionable hygiene, they missed the bigger horror quietly taking shape. This war, it wasn't just about territory. It was the launch pad for something way darker. Because back in 1478, Isabella and Ferdinand had already given birth to the Spanish Inquisition, and during the Granada campaign, it started to spread like wildfire. What began as a religious war was quickly morphing into one of the most ruthless systems of persecution in European history. So, here's the dark twist most history books tiptoe around. While Queen Isabella was supposedly stewing in decade-old underwear, she was orchestrating something way nastier than body odor. Across Spain, thousands of Jews who'd converted to Christianity, conversos, were being hunted down, chained up, and tortured, all because someone whispered they might still light Sabbath candles in secret. Confession or not, suspicion alone could get you roasted alive in one of the Catholic Church's favorite horror shows, the auto da fe. These weren't trials. These were public execution parties, gruesome, fiery theater where heretics were paraded, shamed, and burned, while crowds watched like it was Sunday entertainment. The irony, while Isabella was allegedly walking around as a biological weapon wrapped in linen, she was obsessed with purifying Spain from heretics, from Muslims, from Jews, from anyone who didn't fit her version of holy. Her private hygiene was a national health hazard, but her public campaign was genocide disguised as devotion. And, just when you thought it couldn't get more insane, it did. January 2nd, 1492. After nearly a decade of siege warfare, after villages were razed, cities starved out, and families torn apart, it happened. The gates of Granada creaked open. Out rode Boabdil, the last Muslim ruler in Spain. They called him El Chico, the boy king, but that day there was nothing noble about his title. He handed over the keys to the Alhambra, dropped to his knees in the dirt, and surrendered the final piece of Muslim Spain to the queen who hadn't changed her underwear since the campaign began. They say Isabella cried. Maybe it was victory. Maybe it was relief. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the stench finally reaching her own nose. Now, here's the kicker. Legend has it, Isabella finally ditched the infamous garments that day. But they weren't washed. Oh no. Supposedly, they were so violently fragrant, they had to be burned. Some chroniclers claim they were even paraded around first, treated like holy relics, until someone in the crowd probably passed out and they were rushed to a pyre for public safety. But let's zoom out for a second, because while the world was mocking her smell, Isabella was reshaping the damn planet. The conquest of Granada didn't just mean mission accomplished. It meant Spain was finally united, its war chest refilled, and Isabella had enough political clout to bankroll a certain Italian sailor named Christopher Columbus. Yep, the same woman who allegedly wore the same drawers for 10 years is the one who funded the voyage that changed global history. But here's the twist that brings everything crashing back to Earth. Did any of this even happen? The infamous underwear story? It doesn't appear in any official royal letters, military dispatches, or diaries from people who were actually there. The earliest source? A dude named Gonzalo Fernández de Oviedo, writing over 50 years later. The guy had flair, sure, but he wasn't known for sticking strictly to the facts. He says he heard it from soldiers. Right. Meanwhile, actual eyewitnesses, dead silent on the underwear. Not a word. No royal advisor mentioned it. No ambassador, no soldier, not even a gossiping maid. But here's what is true. Isabella was fanatically religious. She made wild vows constantly. She pawned her royal jewels to fund the Granada War. She marched across Spain with her army, lived in tents, caught diseases, and ran the whole damn show from a muddy, lice-ridden war camp. So while the exact smell level of her undergarments might be up for debate, the fact that she was a hard-ass ruler with an iron grip on both politics and religion, absolutely real. So here's the deal. This whole underwear vow thing? Yeah, it's probably what historians like to call a pious fiction. Basically, a made-up PR stunt designed to make Queen Isabella look like some divine war machine. And honestly, it worked. But let's be real. Medieval underwear wasn't exactly Victoria's secret. It was thick, scratchy linen, stupid expensive, and sometimes even passed down like family heirlooms. Gross, I know. Even royalty only had a couple of pairs. So yeah, wearing the same set for a while wasn't unheard of. But 10 freaking years? That wasn't devotion. That was a public health crisis waiting to explode. Even back then, people weren't clueless. Medieval doctors may not have known what germs were, but they knew that nasty body conditions led to disease. And if someone at court started smelling like death warmed over, people noticed. Which is probably how this wild story got legs in the first place. Because here's what really matters. This wasn't just a weird hygiene story. It was a full-blown propaganda weapon. It turned Isabella into more than a queen. It made her a holy warrior in linen armor. Catholic countries praised her like a saint. Protestants, they roasted her like a pig at a feast. Either way, the myth stuck. And like every juicy rumor, it got juicier over time. The OG version was all about piety, but by the 1700s, people were claiming she nearly caused a plague outbreak at court because of the smell. Others said her servants drew straws to avoid going near her. It was like royal hygiene turned horror movie. Each generation twisted the story to fit their fears. Toxic power, religious extremism, or just plain old BO. Her underwear became a metaphor for everything from blind devotion to monarchy gone mad. But while everyone was distracted by the stench, the real legacy of Isabella was unfolding, and it was way darker than any dirty laundry. Because under her reign, Spain didn't just unify, it exploded. The empire she helped build spanned oceans. Gold and silver from the Americas poured into Europe and bankrolled centuries of bloody wars. Cultures collided, languages died, entire populations were erased, and while Europe celebrated its new power, the cost was catastrophic. Let's talk 1492, a year the world remembers for Columbus sailing west. But there's another headline: the Spanish Inquisition and mass Jewish expulsion. That same year, up to 200,000 Jews were told to get out or convert. Families ripped apart. Homes abandoned. Thousands died in exile. And if you stayed and converted, you lived under constant fear of torture, thanks to Isabella's personal monster, the Inquisition. Muslims didn't fare better. Their mosques were shut, their language banned, Arabic books burned. That rich cultural soup of medieval Spain, obliterated. And if you think the horror stopped there, take a look across the ocean. That same religious fire that fueled Isabella's Reconquista, it sailed with the conquistadors. Indigenous civilizations across the Americas were wiped off the map. Diseases, guns, chains, millions perished. Entire empires fell, while Europe got rich. And behind it all was a queen who, if the story's true, couldn't be bothered to change her underwear. Think about that. A woman so consumed by spiritual obsession, so blinded by her holy mission, that her personal vow became a national myth, while the real devastation she caused got buried under centuries of legend and perfume. So what's the truth? Did Isabella really marinate in the same linen for a decade? Probably not. But the fact we're still asking the question says a lot more about the stink she left behind, not on her body, but on history itself. Look, odds are this whole underwear legend? Total BS. But here's the twist. Even if it's fake, it mails something real about Queen Isabella and the chaos she left behind. Whether she actually made that nasty vow or not, Isabella of Castile wasn't just some proper lady in a crown. She was fire and fury. She crushed the last Moslem stronghold, stitched together a divided Spain, bankrolled Columbus, and kicked off an empire that would reshape the globe. But don't forget, she also greenlit one of history's most brutal crackdowns on religious minorities. This chick wasn't just raising flags and building churches. She lit the fuse on centuries of persecution. The underwear myth stuck around because it hits that insane gap between royal glam and real-life grime, between preaching purity and punishing half the country into submission. Isabella's legacy? A complete mess. Brilliant war strategist, obsessed religious zealot. A queen who opened up new worlds and burned the old ones to the ground. She funded voyages that changed human history and policies that wiped out entire cultures. Spain today, still trying to figure out if she was a nation builder or a nightmare. So here's the uncomfortable question. Was she a legend or a lunatic? That probably depends on whether your ancestors sailed the ships or were chained up in their path. And that's why this gross little underwear rumor actually matters. Because it strips away the gold and marble and shows you the raw truth that even the biggest, baddest rulers were still just people. Sweaty, stubborn, sometimes straight up disgusting. So I'll leave you with this. In a world obsessed with neat little heroes and villains, can we handle someone like Isabella? Can we laugh at the filth and still call out the cruelty? Can one woman be both a nation's icon and a global warning sign? What do you think? Was that vow real or just medieval clickbait? Was she a queen on a mission or a fanatic with a crown? Or maybe, just maybe, she was both. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone, and I want to hear how you see it. If this video messed with your view of history, hit that like button. Subscribe to Crimes of the Crown for more stories that peel back the velvet curtain on power. And don't forget to ring the bell so YouTube actually shows you our next dive. Want to go deeper into this chaos? I linked my sources down below. Spoiler, real history is way messier than the myths. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't just, did Isabella change her underwear? It's, how the hell did a woman like that change the whole damn world? And why are we still cleaning up after her?